Dear students, today I am with a new lesson, that is the control and coordination. In this topic, we are going to study about the human nervous system, the endocrine system, phytohormones, as well as plant growth movements. So in this PPT, I'll be discussing only about the human nervous system. You can see the pictures. They are showing the components, the parts of the nervous system, and you can just zoom it and see the central picture which has been shown over there with the functions also. So human nervous system, when I say, it consists of three parts. Number one, that is the central nervous system. Second is the peripheral nervous system, and the third one is the autonomous nervous system. Central nervous system, it consists of brain and the spinal cord. Peripheral nervous system, it consists of the cranial nerves and the spinal nerves. Cranial nerves are those nerves which arise from the brain, because brain is protected inside the cranium of the skull. So we call these nerves as the cranial nerves. And the nerves which are arising from the spinal cord, they are called the spinal nerves. We have 12 pairs of cranial nerves and 31 pairs of spinal nerves in our body. This autonomous nervous system, this is the nervous system which normally control the activities of various visceral organs like the glands. So, and the heartbeat, rate of respiration. Then this is divided into two type parts. Number one, sympathetic nervous system, and the second one is the parasympathetic nervous system. Both of these systems, they work opposite to each other. So we can also say that they are antagonistic to each other. Sympathetic system, it accelerates, it increases the rate of heartbeat, and whereas parasympathetic system, it just regulates the rate of heartbeat. In the same way, this sympathetic system, it accelerates various activities of the body. The same way, parasympathetic, it just regulates it just slows down. Here in the brain also it is being mentioned. The brain, when I say about the human brain, it is present inside our skull. I'll be taking this in the separate slide. It has the three parts. Number one, the forebrain. Second is the midbrain, and the hindbrain. This forebrain, this consists of cerebrum. Main part of the forebrain is the cerebrum. Midbrain, and the midbrain is the part which connects the forebrain with the hindbrain. Then hindbrain, it consists of the cerebellum as well as the medulla oblongata. Our nervous system now, it consists of 5 sense organs also. These sense organs, they are tongue, ears, eyes, nose, and the skin. All these sense organs, these 5 sense organs, they have the receptors in them, receive the signals. Like the ear, it has the phonoreceptors. The eyes have the photoreceptors. Then skin has the thermoreceptors, and nose has the olfactory receptors, and the tongue has the gustatory receptors, which receive the signals and transmit these signals to the spinal cord or to the brain. The structure and functional unit of the nervous system, it is the neuron. So the neurons can also be classified, you can say, on the basis of functions as well as the basis of the structure. If I just give you the example, say on the basis of structure, there are 3 types of neurons. Number one, unipolar neuron. Then come to the bipolar neuron, BI we can write, polar neuron. Then come the multipolar. This neuron which has been shown in this diagram, that is the multipolar neuron. We have the multipolar neurons in our body. We don't have the unipolar neuron. Bipolar neurons are found only in the retina of our eyes. So each neuron now, what does it consist? It consists of a cell body. This is the main cell body, and it has got a long extension which is known as the axon. This axon, it ends in this and terminals, you can say normally, these are called the nerve endings. Each nerve endings has got these swollen knobs which are called the synaptic knobs, and it has got small extensions coming out from it. These are called the branch extensions which are called the dendrites. The message now, how the message travels along the neuron. Remember that message always transferred is conducted from the dendrites. These dendrites receive the signals, and from there it goes to cytons. From cyton it goes to the axon, and through that it goes to the nerve endings. In this you can also see the diagram showing the motor neuron as well as the sensory neuron. Now this was all about how the neurons are being divided on the basis of the structure. Now neurons on the basis of functions are of two types. Number one, sensory neuron. It has been shown in this diagram. You can see this is the sensory neuron. Sorry, this one is the motor neuron and this one is the sensory neuron. So sensory neuron, here you can see these are the sensory receptor, maybe the skin. So from here, the message is traveling to our either the brain or to the spinal cord. And from here, the message is being analyzed, and finally the response is being carried through the another neuron, and this is the motor neuron to the muscles. So the sensory neurons, they take the message from the receptor organs or the sensory organs to the spinal cord or the brain, and motor neurons, they bring the response to the muscles. Next comes the neuromuscular junction. Neuromuscular junction, it is a joint, you can say, on the region or the point where the muscle or where the nerve, or you can say the neuron nerve endings, they rest on the muscle. This junction is known as the neuromuscular junction. On the muscle here especially, if I just show you these paw like structures, you can say normally, or you can say claws like structures, these are the swollen portions. It has been shown in the detailed form. Here, this one, it is the nerve endings here, ending with the knob-like structure, synaptic knob, or we, and inside the synaptic knob, you can see the mitochondria and small vesicles, which are called the synaptic vesicles. They contain a chemical inside them known as the neurotransmitters. And then this one is the muscle. And now what happens when the signal passes through a neuron, it comes in the nerve endings. From this, the synaptic knob, the chemical moves out in this junction. We call it a neuromuscular junction. And then when the muscle come in contact with that, the signal, finally what happens? The protein, that is actin and myosin inside them, they start contracting in the same way. As a result, the muscle start contracting. This is the response given by the muscle. In this above diagram, you can just here see this one. These are the two neurons. So how the signals are passing from one neuron to the another. The junction between the two neurons, this portion here, you can see this is known as the synapse. So what is a synapse now? You can say it is a junction between the nerve endings and the dendrites. Nerve endings of one neuron with the dendrites of the another neuron. It is known, this junction is known as the synapse. And the space you can see here. You can here see presynaptic terminal is being written here, and this is on the post one. Here there is a space. Generally, this space is known as the synaptic cleft. And this synaptic cleft is a space normally, and synapse is the region where you can say the message is being conveyed from the nerve endings into the dendrites of the another neuron. Now nerve. Well, nerve is also a very important part now, see, of the nervous system. So what is a nerve normally? The bundle of nerve fibers. Each neuron, it has got, you can say, the axon also, and these axons of different neurons, many neurons you can say, when they are being covered by a connective tissue as a fat, then it becomes a nerve. So you can say this one is a neuron, this one is the axon. In the same way, many new axons, now when they are being wrapped by a sheath of a connective tissue, we call it a nerve. So on the basis of origin, nerves are classified as, how they are being classified, just see. Nerves are classified as the cranial nerves and the spinal nerves. If the nerves arise from the brain, they are called cranial nerves. If they arise from the spine or the spinal cord, we call them spinal nerves. I've already mentioned that how many pairs of these spinal nerves and the cranial nerves are present in our body. Now, on the basis of functions, the nerves are classified again into two types. On the basis of functions, you can say, number one, the sensory nerves as well as the motor nerves. The sensory nerves are those nerves which have the neurons only, which take the message from the sensory receptors to the spinal cord or the brain, and motor nerves, they bring the message to the effector organs. These effector organs could be the muscles or they could be the glands. A very important part of the nervous system, it is the brain now. Let us know what is the brain. Though I have not mentioned written it over here, but I'll be telling you here. Brain is a very soft and delicate organ of our body, which is present inside our skull. Our skull is, even inside the skull, there is a cavity, you can say the region that is known the cranium. It is present inside the cranium. So brain normally it weighs 1400 grams. Is the average weight of the brain of the human. So brain has got three main parts. Number one, that the cerebrum. Second one is the cerebellum, and the third one is the brainstem. Brainstem is also known as medulla oblongata. What is the role of the cerebrum? Is the largest part of the brain, and it is divided into right and left hemispheres. This is the brain that it with the brain, and so brain is divided into two hemispheres, the left one and the right hemisphere. It performs higher functions like interpreting touch and hearing, as well as speech, reasoning, emotions, learning, and fine control of the movement. All is being controlled by the cerebrum part. Cerebellum now, it is second largest part. It is also known as a little brain also. This is responsible for a number of functions, including motor skills such as balance of the body, maintaining the posture of the body, and also help in the coordination. Third one is the brainstem. It acts as a relay center, you can say. Okay, and connects cerebellum to the spinal cord. Besides this, in the brainstem, there is structure known as the pons, which helps in regulating the rate of respiration. Now, cerebrospinal fluid. What is this? Like in between in the body, normally when you studied about the tissues, you've come across the term the tissue fluid, and which later on known as, when it starts flowing in the closed channels, we call it a lymph. But here that's the same fluid. So we do not use the word tissue fluid in terms of the brain or the nervous system. So cerebrospinal fluid is a clear, you can say, colorless body fluid which is found in the spaces in the brain as well as the spinal cord. It has a very important role. The questions are being given in the board examination from that. So cerebrospinal fluid, it acts as a cushion, you can say, for the brain within the skull. So the brain is present inside the skull, and the brain is being protected by certain protective layers known as the meninges. And in between the meninges, this fluid is also present. So what is that when we bounce back on the ground or somewhere? So the brain, which is very soft, it can collide even with the skull, which is the heart. So to just protect it from that, the cerebrospinal fluid, it absorbs the shock and protect the brain. Second, you can say that it also circulates nutrients. Brain CSF, it contains the nutrients and the chemicals which are filtered from the blood and removes the waste products from the brain or the neurons normally, as you can say. Meninges. I used the term meninges in the previous slide here. What are the meninges? Meninges, these are the membranes. Membrane is covering of brain and the spinal cord. The three type of three meninges, especially when I say in the brain. Number one, that's the dura mater. We use the word mater, M-A-T-E-R. Arachnoid matter, and then the pia mater. This one is close to the skull, close to the cranium, bony part. This one is the middle one, and this one is the innermost layer of the brain. And in between these layers, the CSF is present. What is the role of this meninges? They protect the brain and the spinal cord from the mechanical trauma, mechanical injuries, mechanical shocks, you can say. Support the blood vessels and form a continuous cavity through which the cerebrospinal fluid passes. Human brain, you can just see the structure of the brain. It somewhat seems like the walnut. It seems like a walnut also. You can see lot many convulsions are there and some depressions are there. These convulsions and depressions, they are being known as sulci and gyri. I'll not be mentioning too much about this one. This portion, whole portion, this one is the cerebrum. This one is the cerebellum, and this portion is the brain stem. Let us see in the next one. You can see now in this figure. This part of the brain, it is the cerebrum here. This portion is the cerebellum, and this one is the brain stem. The functions of the cerebrum is also being given here. I have already discussed with you all these parts. Let us move to the next part here. The cerebrum, when I say, the cerebrum is again divided. You can say the cerebrum part, the outer part and the inner part. Before I move to the outer and inner part, first I'll go to the lobes. The cerebrum, you can say, it is divided into 4 lobes. The frontal lobe, the parietal lobe here on the top, just above the ears, this is a temporal lobe, and on the back side, this is the occipital lobe, and this one is the cerebellum and the medulla oblongata. The functions of these lobes have been mentioned in here. The frontal lobe of the cerebrum, which is the seat of memory, learning, reasoning, coordination, speaking. If any damage occurs in this way, these responses will be affected. Then in the temporal lobe, it receives the smell, this one, and the hearing, and it has in understanding the speech also. The parietal lobe, it receives the sense of pain, touch, temperature, pressure, and even the taste also. Then comes to the occipital lobe. This lobe is responsible for the visual area because the visual reflexes or association centers are present in this region. This is the internal structure of the brain, which has been mentioned given in your book, which shows now this one is the cranium, then these are the meninges, and then the inner part. See the cerebrum when I say it's that. The cerebrum consists of the outer part and the inner part. The outer part appears to be grey due to the presence of nerve cell bodies, which makes it appear to be grey. Alright. So, and we call it a grey matter. This portion is the cortex and it is known as the grey matter. The inner portion is called the medulla of the brain and we call it a white matter. And white matter, white is known as the white matter because it consists of myelinated nerve fibers. Nerve fibers, when I'm saying, it means I'm talking about the axons. So these axons, they have got an insulating layer of a fatty tissue which is known as the myelin. So this is a myelin sheath and this myelin sheath is interrupted at the certain intervals. So this myelin sheath, it makes the nerve fibers white. So we call it a white matter. So the brain has got the grey matter as well as the white matter. In the next one, here in this one, you can see the grey matter, how the tissues, how you can see the foldings in the cortex region here. Okay, these foldings. So why it is being remain in the folds normally just to increase the surface area. Clear? So this increases the surface area. A lot of information remains stored in the brain only. This portion is the midbrain, which is connecting the forebrain with the hindbrain. Clear? And in this reason, there is a reason known as the hypothalamus, which is also sometime it is regarded as the part of the forebrain, and sometime it is regarded as the part of the midbrain. Hypothalamus, it is a gland also, because it releases forms certain hormones, and it releases certain hormones which control the even the pituitary gland. Pituitary gland is the master gland of the body, okay, which is especially a part of your endocrine system. Then comes this portion, this is the medulla oblongata. Now here, this portion, this medulla oblongata, from here, this controls the this portion is known as the pons normally, and this portion is the medulla oblongata. The pons region of the brainstem, it helps in regulating the rate of respiration. Remaining part, you can say, now the medulla oblongata, it moves into the vertebral column and forms the spinal cord. This portion is the cerebellum. I have already mentioned the functions of this cerebellum. In the exam, what could be asked, the diagram could be given, and then the various labeling parts with the functions can be asked to you. And either you can be asked to draw the diagram of the human brain. Functions of the brain. I've already discussed all the functions with you, but still, let me recapitulate the certain some of the functions. It receives the impulses. It also helps in regulating the body temperature, control the mood and emotions, control the sense of taste and smell, synthesizes the body's essential hormones, and coordinates the messages from the autonomous nervous system. That was all about the brain. After brain, I'm moving to the spinal cord. Spinal cord, it's a cylindrical rod, you can see. Here, when we see the TS, this is the TS, this is a transverse section of the spinal cord. So what do you see? Again, the outer coverings, they must be they are the meninges are also there. And inside it, here you can see a central canal, inside which the CSF runs. In it, the gray matter is inside and white matter is outside. Whereas you have seen in case of brain, the gray matter was outside and the white matter was inside. It has got, this one is the white matter, and this one is the gray matter, and this one is the white matter. It has got the nerves. Now these nerves form the roots here near the spinal cord. This one is called the dorsal nerve, and this one is the ventral nerve root. We call it a nerve root here. And this swelling is inside in the nerves is known as the ganglion. And ganglions are the regions where the nerve cell bodies are generally present. Spinal cord is associated with the reflex action. Now, what is reflex action? Definition can be asked. The examples could be asked. Reflex action is a sudden and involuntary response to a stimulus. Immediately, without thinking, without the involvement of the brain, it is happening. It helps organisms to quickly adapt to an adverse circumstances that could have potential to cause harm or even death, like pulling our hands away immediately after touching a hot or cold object is a classic example of the reflex action. Some more examples are there. When light acts as a stimulus, the pupil of the eyes changes inside. When you go in the bright sunlight, what happens? You'll find that the pupil shrinks. When you come again in the room, then again it expands. Okay, again, people never ask you what to do. So again, it's a reflex action. Sudden jerky withdrawal of a hand or leg when picked by a pin, coughing, sneezing, yawning, everything. These are again the examples of the reflex action. Reflex arc. So the path showing the reflex action. The pathway of nerve involved in reflex action. So what does it involve? It involves the receptors that receive the message from the external stimulus. Sensory neuron carries the message from the receptor to the central nervous system. We can see this diagram here. In this diagram, what you see, this is the hot object. When we touch the hot object, the sensory receptors present in our skin, they receive the signals, and through the signals means the nerve impulse. Then the signals, they move through the sensory neuron in this you can say spinal cord, and through the motor neuron they give the response to the effector. And effector means the muscle, the proteins, the actin and myosin protein, they contract and the muscle gets shortened. In between this sensory neuron and the motor neuron, in the gray matter, what you find, the relay neuron, which especially helps in the interpretation of the response. Now, functions of the nervous system, especially. What does it do? It collects information from the surroundings. It controls and coordinates the movement of the muscles. It helps to recognize smell, taste, vision, hearing, etc. with the help of the sense organs. Well, this is all for today. See you with the next new PPT and the new topic, that is the phytohormones. Thank you very much.